Thank you, Glenn, and thanks for giving us the opportunity to come up and talk with you today. It's my first time at CTC, so thanks to you and the committee for giving us this opportunity. As you can see, I am not, if you know Aaron Wilson, you know I am not Aaron Wilson. Aaron is a big guy and he has big shoes to fill, so I'm going to do my best. Aaron will be here tomorrow talking about, I think, weather pattern effects on conservation practices, something like that. So if you see him tomorrow, you can tell him, how I did as a stand-in. So before I get started, Aaron and I are partners in an enterprise we call the State Climate Office of Ohio. So that's a collaboration between my department, which is geography. I'm a staff member in geography. And Aaron is an extension climatologist. He's also half-time with the Bird, Polar, and Climate Research Center. And that's the third partner in this collaboration we call SCOO, the State Climate Office of Ohio. So with that, let me tell you what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about an app that SCOO developed over the last couple of years. And the app is called FARM. And you might think FARM is about farming, but no, FARM is an acronym that stands for Field Application Resource Monitor, which hopefully we'll know what that means by the end of the talk. So FARM is a web-based application that is basically a decision tool to help producers determine whether it is within guidance to apply granular fertilizer or manure based on weather forecasts or precipitation forecasts. So since I'm a climatologist, I have to talk about the weather, and let's see if we can get this thing. There we go. So the first couple slides I'm going to show you are about precipitation trends in Ohio over the last 100 years and in a couple of cases of the last 50 years. And so we'll start with long-term trends for precipitation, annual precipitation over the last 120 years or so. And the map, it's not that clear from the back, but the dark blue areas are showing that basically precipitation has been increasing over that time frame. And Ohio is no different. Ohio's annual precipitation has been going up about 5 to 15% over that time frame. These slides I'm going to show you are mostly from the National Climate Assessment, which came out in 2017. Looking at that precipitation increase, it's not the same across all seasons. It's stronger in spring, summer, and fall. And for some regions in the United States, that fall signal is really strong. But Ohio's increase is spread pretty evenly across those three seasons, spring, fall, and summer, not so much in the winter, which I'll get back to because the last couple of winters haven't followed that trend. One of the issues in the increasing precipitation is whether or not precipitation intensity has been increasing. That is to say, how much precipitation is falling per event, or are we getting larger precipitation events over in a year? And the answer is yes, we are. And this graphic's a little hard to sort out, but basically what it's telling us is if you look at the precipitation event that occurs only once every 20 years. So that would be a pretty big precipitation event. And if you look at how much precipitation is falling in that once every 20 year kind of event, how has that event changed over time? And what we're seeing is that kind of event now packs about a 1/4 inch more precipitation in it than it did, say, 100 years ago. So the 1 in 20 kind of event has grown in terms of magnitude. Another way of looking at that is to look at the top 1% of precipitation events and look at what is the probability over time of getting one of those precipitation events that would figure as a top 1% in the instrumental record precipitation event. So we have 120 years of precipitation data in Ohio. We look at the top 1% of those. How many of those have occurred recently? And a lot of them have. So what we're saying is that we're seeing that the chances of getting one of those top 1% precipitation events is about 42% higher now in the Midwest than it was earlier in the instrumental time period. So again, same kind of deal. The high intensity, the high volume precipitation event has become a little bit more frequent in Ohio and in the Midwest in general. This is just another way of looking at the same kind of information. Here on the left is observed annual precipitation. This is statewide for Ohio, and this is binned by 5-year periods. So going all the way back to the turn of the 20th century and looking at 5-year periods going forward. And you can see, it's not a straight line by any stretch of the imagination, but there is more above the line at the end of the record than there is below the line. So more annual precipitation, and the number of extreme events, and here we're calling a 2-inch rain, 2 inches in one day, we're calling that extreme. That's not extreme for some parts of the world, but in Ohio that would be a pretty big deal. So the number of those 2-inch events per 5-year period has increased over time, and a lot of those are packed in at the end of the instrumental record. So we see precipitation going up, and we see precipitation intensity going up a little bit as well. So that's just, I'm circling what I just circled there. So there we go. You can see what are some of the other big years. 1913 stands out. That was a huge year, basically a statewide flood. So are we heading back for that? Probably not. But this is certainly something to think about in terms of applying fertilizer and manure. So what's the big deal with large precipitation events? Well, the obvious answer is floods. So it gives people a chance to put on their hip waders and go out and play in a flood. But it's also implicated in these harmful algal blooms. This one showing Cleveland, and this one all the way down on the Ohio River. So these large precipitation events are implicated in the nose, and we know those are the subject of guidance from ODA. So just to bring that to a more kind of recent look, this is kind of a 2018 review of precipitation. Precipitation in 2018, it was a pretty wet year, but it was near normal in the northwest of Ohio, not near normal in the southeast. So it was pretty high in the southeast. 2018 for Ohio as a whole turned out to be the third wettest year on record. September was the second wettest September on record. And this was driven largely by some tropical activity. We had Hurricane Gordon come through. So that kind of inflated those receipts. But you can see some of these precipitation departures from normal are really large. So again, up around the northwestern corner of the state and the northeastern corner, this is pretty normal. But in the southeastern and extreme south of the state, we have precipitation departures of 200%. 200% of normal, twice what we normally receive. So that's pretty big. That's for fall of 2018. Winter just ended, by the way. You can look outside and verify that for yourself. So winter for a climatologist is December, January, and February. So we have the precipitation receipts in for winter of 2019. And the situation is pretty much the same across the northern third, pretty normal. The southern half, let's say, is above normal. So it's been wet, and that is the subject of our farm app. So I think I can skip that. That's about soil moisture, and that's just going to show you that soil moisture, it got wetter as the year went on. Okay, so that's precipitation. Precipitation's going up. Precipitation intensity going up a little bit. So one of SCU's first goals, one of our first projects in our collaboration between Extension and Geography and Bird Polar and Climate Research Center, was to respond to this ask from OSU Extension to provide farmers in the western Lake Erie Basin with real-time guidance for real-time climate guidance for application of manure and fertilizer. And so we used funds that were leveraged from a grant we received from an OSU program called Connect and Collaborate to build an app that would allow you to do this. And we partnered with Weather USA. That's a private company that runs actually a nationwide network of weather information. It's headquartered in Columbus. And so we worked with them to do some of the coding for our app. So the remainder of the slides is our screenshots from the farm app. So I'm just going to take you through the farm app and tell you what it does. You won't be able to probably read all the print on the screen. I'm just going to talk you through it so that when you go out and use it on your own, you will have heard me describe it for you, so maybe it won't seem so unfamiliar. Before I go on, I want to just emphasize there is also a tutorial for the farm app, on the farm app, so you can always get help when you need it. Okay, so this is the farm app. So when I say app, it's not an app that you would go to like Google Play Store or something and download. This is a website. So you don't need any special software. It doesn't cost any money. So it is totally free. It's hosted on our website, and that's our website right there, farm.bpcrc. That's Bird Polar Climate and Research Center.osu.edu. And you can also get it from SCU's website, which is climate.osu.edu. So when you go there, and I know you're all going to go there, so thank you very much in advance, you're going to see this nice picture of two guys, happy guys out in the field. And this is the introductory screen for SCU, or for farm. And you're given 3 ways to get into the app. You can get in as a guest, totally anonymous. You don't have to have a username or anything like that. You can create a username. That's the second option. Or you can, if you've already done that, you can go in here as a returning user. So I'm going to take you through getting into farm as a guest. And that will seamlessly merge into becoming a returning user, which I know you're all going to become. So when you click on continue as a guest, you are taken to this kind of setup field screen. So farm is the concept here is that you have a farm, you have a field that you want to know whether it's a good time to apply fertilizer or manure based strictly on the precipitation forecast, which is the guidance from ODA. So farm needs to know where that field is that you're concerned about. So the first thing you have to do in farm is set up a field. And there are lots of ways to do it. There are 3 ways to do it. You can type in an address, and search for it. So that would be one of these boxes. I can't even read it from here. So I know you in the back can't read that. But one of the boxes there is to type in an address, and then you can search for it, and our app will geolocate that address and zoom in on it. Or you can, if you're using a phone or a laptop that has location services on it, like an iPad or something like that, you can use that and say, use my GPS, and it will zoom in on your current location. So if you're out in the field, it'll find you there. Or you can just use the plus and minus zoom features here and zoom in on some area of Ohio that you're interested in. So there are lots of ways to get to the field that you're interested in, and that's what you have to do to set this up. I've seen people who have done this without any help from me, so it is totally doable. The other thing that you have to do on this page is you have to give your field a name, because your field is going to be referenced in the farm dashboard by that name. So you do those things. It zooms in on the field, and here it shows the zoomed in view of the field setup screen. And now we have to either delineate that field with a border. So this is the larger cornfield at Waterman Farm in Columbus. So you can use one of these little tools here. The top one, indicated by the yellow arrow, is a polygon outline tool. You just click, 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 click around the perimeter of your field, and that will delineate the field. Or you can use this second tool, which is just a marker, and put that marker right in the middle of the field. Honestly, the marker is a lot easier to use. So unless your field is huge, say, larger than a square mile, so if you have more than 600 acres in a field that you're looking at, you're probably going to want to use just a marker. If your field is large, let's say 600 acres or more, you might want to outline it, because at about a square mile, that field is starting to become close to the size of the pixels for the forecast that we're going to reference in a little bit. So you might want to actually delineate that. Regardless of which method you choose, you either outline it or you drop a marker in the middle of it, and then you click this Save Field button down here. And then you're done setting up a field, and now you can use the farm app to monitor whether or not it's okay or a good idea to go out and drop fertilizer on that field. So once you've saved the field, you're taken to what we call the farm dashboard. And the farm dashboard is a view of your field that has information about it. First of all, we're going to reference forecasts, precipitation forecasts for this field, and it'll tell you what date and what time the forecast is valid for right up here. The blue arrow is kind of the business part of this dashboard. That's where we are giving you an indication of whether or not the precipitation forecast exceeds the limits suggested by ODA. And those limits, let's see if I can remember them. I always get these backwards. Those limits are 1 inch in 12 hours, so a forecast precipitation, a 50% chance of 1 inch or more of precipitation in the next 12 hours for fertilizer, or a 50% chance of a 1/4 inch or more in the next 24 hours for manure. I was close. Okay.
And greater than a 50.
Yeah. Yes, greater than. Thank you so much for being right there. Appreciate that. So if the forecast exceeds either one of those thresholds, you're going to get a red light right here. And we have 2 lights, one for fertilizer and one for manure. So one could be red and the other could be green, or they could both be red, or they could both be green. So, so you get a kind of a stoplight look at the forecast, and you get the actual forecast right there. So that's like the big information there on the dashboard. I want to talk just a little bit about the forecast. So the forecast we're using is a product from the National Weather Service called the PQPF, the Probabilistic Quantitative Precipitation Forecast. You may not have ever heard of the PQPF, but you have all seen the PQPF because it is used in almost every precipitation forecast in the United States of America. It's not called that because who wants to say PQPF on the evening news? Nobody. So, but this is where we get the chance for precipitation for daily weather forecasts. The PQPF is an outcome of a whole ensemble of model runs. There's a whole bunch of model runs that go into it with slightly different starting conditions. So they have slightly different outcomes of precipitation forecasts. We take the 50% one is the one that is the amount of precipitation that 50% or more of the models are showing. So it's a kind of a raster-based output map, and the size of those cells in the output map is 1.5 mile by 1.5 mile. So you can see that if your field is much smaller than that, then you really don't have to delineate it. If your field is bigger than that, then you should probably delineate it. Okay, so that's where the data is coming from, the PQPF. Going back to the dashboard, we have a couple of other pieces of information on the dashboard. We have the general weather forecast for your field based on the National Digital Forecast. So this gives you high and low temperature and percentage of any precipitation possible. So over here we're getting the threshold kind of look. Here we're getting whether or not there's going to be any, what the chances of any precipitation are. A major part of farm, one of the motivating things that we wanted to, one of the things that motivated us to create it the way we did, we wanted people to be able to go back in time and access forecasts from the past. So if you need to document your practices over the past year or so, you can do it with this tool because you can stick any date in this window right here, and the farm app will pull up the appropriate PQPF forecast for that date because we're archiving every one of those. So we have a big archive of those going back to July of 2017 that you can access. And so you can see, oh, I applied manure on September 8th of 2018. Let me see if that was a good idea. So you put in September 8th in the window there, and you come up with, oh my gosh, it wasn't a good idea. Because, yes?
Can I print that out?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, if you're doing this on a desktop, you would just hit your browser's print button, and you'd have a map right there. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, can you print those out? And absolutely you can, because if you're doing this on a desktop, you would just use your browser's print function and print that out. So that would be a way of documenting your practice. So if you did apply manure on September 8th, and then you accessed the PQPF forecast via the farm app, this is what you would see. You would see that the light was green for fertilizer. Yes, there was a 50% chance of 2.96 inches of rain in the next 12 hours. Yes, technically you were within compliance. Maybe not a good idea, but still you were within compliance. But if you spread manure on that day, the chance of, it was a 50% chance of 2.56 inches of rain on that day over the next 24 hours. So the forecast was for a lot of rain. And this is the tail end of Hurricane Gordon. So probably nobody went out and spread manure on that day, I would guess. But if you did, then this would tell you that that was probably not a great idea. So the historical part of farm is really, I think, one of its most salient features, its most useful feature. All right, so what's next? We looked at that. So you've set up a field, you've looked at that dashboard, you think, oh, this is great. Do I have to throw away all that work because I came in as a guest? No, you do not. If you set up a field and you decide, oh, I want to use this again as a returning user, all you have to do is click on the farm icon at the top of the screen, and you'll go back to the login thing, and you'll create a user profile. And all the work that you've done, setting up the field, giving it a name, that'll be saved under this user profile that you are now going to create. So when you do that, we're going to ask you some questions. We're going to need a username. So that's not an email address. That's just a name that you can remember. It could actually be your name. So that I can actually remember my name from day to day. I cannot remember anything else. So we're going to need a username, we're going to need a password, and we're going to need an email address. The email address we use to communicate with you when you cannot remember your password. All right, so we will help you set up a new password when you, like me, cannot remember anything from one day to the next. We also use that email address to communicate with you if you opt in for daily email update about the fields that you define. So we will send you the forecast in the morning for the fields that you define to show you whether or not they meet current recommendations. So you set up a user profile. This is a shot of what the email looks like that we'll send you. So you have a couple of fields, and it gives you the outlook for those fields. Come on now. All right. So another option for how to use farm is to not use it to monitor a specific field that you set up, but to just look at the whole state. So maybe the entire state is the area of your concern. So if I'll go back here. There we go. So if you click on this button instead of signing in, but look at statewide conditions, you go to this view of the farm app. And in this view, we're giving you two views of Ohio. In this top one, we're giving you application alerts. So areas that would be under alert for fertilizer application or for manure application. So there's fertilizer for the next 12 hours, fertilizer for the next 24 hours, manure for 24, and manure for 48. So you can get an idea clicking on one of these links. That'll bring up a map that shows you what part of the state it would not be recommended to apply that product in that time frame. If you're interested in what the 50% probability of precipitation is across the state, then you can click one of these links down here. So that's under the label Precipitation Forecasts. And we give that precipitation forecast for 3 different time frames: 12 hours, 24 hours, and 48 hours. This is not a forecast of how much rain there is going to be. This is a 50% possibility for precipitation over the next over this time frame. And so the whole state gets color coded, and there's a legend there. If you mouse over that legend, the amounts for each that are associated with each color will pop up. So you get an idea, just broadly speaking, of what the conditions might be over the next 12, 24, or 48 hours in Ohio. You can zoom in on this if you want. You can back away from it, and if you're interested in some other area, I think we will show you any part of the United States, but you have to actually get to that part of the United States by dragging the map to it. It defaults to Ohio. Okay, so this is hopefully not the last thing we do in this realm. Hopefully this is the first of several decision tools that we hope to create for the ag sector. So the next things that we're hoping to include in this kind of tool would be a test for frozen or snow-covered soil. So right now I know people go out and stick a screwdriver in the ground to see if it's frozen. It might not be convenient to do that all the time. Maybe we can help with that. We'd like to include actual observations from the closest site to your field. That would be a really good thing to add in. We'd like to be able to give you text alerts. Right now we're communicating with users strictly through email, but we recognize that email isn't the be-all and end-all communication for everybody, so we want to incorporate text as well. And then we'd also love to incorporate wind conditions or potential for off-target drift, these kinds of things that I know producers need to deal with in the course of their work. So that's the future, hopefully, for farm. And with that, I would like to again thank CTC and Glenn for asking us to come up. And thanks to our partner, Weather USA, thanks to Extension, and thanks to all the farmers and everybody else who helped test and develop this program for us. This is not the final product, and we're hoping to make it better, and we will make it better through your use and feedback. So there is feedback available.
If people put data in and you upgrade this, will that data be saved? Like if they put fields in and then you guys come up?
Yeah, the question is, if you create a username, you save a field, is that data preserved? Yes. So we preserve that for you. At this moment, I don't know of any plans to, purge users after, you haven't logged in for 2 years. We're going to get rid of your. I haven't heard of anything like that. I think once you create a user profile, we are happy to save it for you until you tell us, no, don't do that anymore. And any other questions? Yes, sir.
Are there any plans to be able to upload it as like a CSV, a list of fields, rather than having manually input them?
Oh, that's a really great question. The question is, can you upload, I would guess you would upload coordinates for your fields as a CSV kind of file format. That's not part of our, certainly it's not possible now, but that's a great idea. And I'll take that back to our team, and we'll run that up the flagpole, as it were. I saw another, yes, sir, back there.
So when farmers here, is this like say they get called in for a manure or a fertilizer complaint, is this a viable defense mechanism?
Yeah, that's a great question. The question is use of the farm app good enough evidence to show that you're in compliance? And the answer is yes, because the regulations reference a local weather forecast. That's the wording of the regulation as far as I understand it. And this, in talks with people at ODA, we've been assured that this is good enough. Absolutely. It's probably better than what you're going to get locally, maybe. That's actually probably exactly the same as what you get locally. Yes, sir.
So the basis for 0.5 for fertilizer and 1 is also a standard, I'm assuming? Like, is that number, where does that number come from?
That number comes from, the question is where do the threshold numbers come from? And they come from Ohio Department of Agriculture regulations. So if they change those, we can change them in farm. Yeah.
The thought process was that the liquid manure could apply up to maybe a half inch in dairy situations. So you would already have a half inch of moisture added to the ground before the rain comes along. So right or wrong, that's the basis.
So it's not a 3-day forecast, it's 2-day forecast for both fertilizer.
So fertilizer is 12 hours, but we give you the next 12 hours and the 12 hours after that, because you might not be on your way out the door to get on your tractor. And the same with the manure. We give you the next 24 hours and the 24 hours after that.
It's also, you showed the map. This can be done for the entire state of Ohio, not just Northwest Ohio.
Yes. Yes. So right now, my understanding is that the regulations are only in force for the 24 counties that have fields in the western Lake Erie Basin. Yes, sir.
So your past data that you have there, is that prediction data or is that actual events? Because I mean,
It's prediction. Yeah. Yes. So the question is, what are we archiving? And what we're archiving are forecasts, because that is what you're judged against, right? So you go out in the field and you spread fertilizer, and you're called upon to, justify that. Well, you justify that by looking at the forecast, not by what happened, but by what you were told was likely to happen, and that's what we're archiving. Yes, sir.
What's the likelihood of getting one of these set up for like conversion factors?
Oh, wow. So the question is, can we, how soon, I guess, are we going to be able to deliver something on drift, potential off-target drift, and inversions? The answer is, it is a great question. We're a little ways away from that. Not so much in terms of being able to implement it on the tool. We're a ways away from that in terms of having data that would inform us on that. Right now, we don't have a lot of stations that report levels at report temperature at more than one level. So we just don't have a lot of inversion data. We have equipment to put that capability out on all the OARDC ag weather stations, but we haven't been able to get that on there, and haven't been able. The ones that we have put them in, they haven't gotten those on the website yet. Other questions? All right. Thank you very much. That was really fun.